Chapter 19. Shares of Inheritance. Kitab al-Fara'id. Chapter 1071. What has been related about teaching the knowledge of inheritance. Narrated Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Alas. The Prophet said, "Knowledge has three categories. Anything else is extra. A precise verse or an established sunnah practiced, or a firm obligatory duty. Great da'if." Chapter 1072. Regarding Al-Kalala. Narrated Jabir. I fell ill, and the Prophet and Abu Bakr came to me on foot to visit me. As I was unconscious, I could not speak to him. He performed ablution and sprinkled water on me, so I became conscious. I said, "Messenger of Allah, how should I do in my property, as I have sisters?" Thereafter, the verse about inheritance was revealed. They ask thee for legal decision. Say, Allah directs thus about those who leave no descendants or ascendants as heirs. Great Sahih. Chapter 1073. A person who has no son but he has sisters. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. I fell ill, and I had 7 sisters. The Messenger of Allah came to me and blew on my face, so I became conscious. I said, "Messenger of Allah, may I not bequeath 1/3 of my property to my sisters?" He replied, "Do good." I asked, "Half?" He replied, "Do good." He then went out and left me, and said, "I do not think, Jabir, you will die of this disease. Allah has revealed verses and described the share of your sisters. He appointed 2/3 for them." Jabir used to say, "This verse was revealed about me. They ask thee for a legal decision. Say, Allah directs thus about those who leave no descendants or ascendants as heirs." Great Sahih. Narrated Al-Bara bin Asib. The last verse revealed about the deceased who left no descendants or ascendants. They ask thee for the legal decision. Say, Allah directs thus about those who leave no descendants or ascendants as heirs. Great Sahih. Narrated Al-Bara ibn Asib. A man came to the Prophet and said, "Messenger of Allah, they ask thee for a legal decision about a kalala. What is meant by kalala?" He replied, "The verse revealed in summer is sufficient for you." I asked Abul Shak, "Does it mean a person who dies and leaves neither children nor father?" He said, "This is so. The people think it is so." Great Sahih. Chapter 1074. What has been related about the inheritance for descendants. Narrated Husayl bi Shurabil of Shurabil al-Awadi. A man came to Abu Musa al-Ashari and Salman bi Rabia and asked about a case where there were a daughter, a son's daughter, and full sister. They replied, "The daughter gets half, and the full gets half. The son's daughter gets nothing. Go to Ibn Masud, and you will find that he agrees with me." So the man came to him and informed him about their opinion. He said, I would then be in error, and not be one of those who are rightly guided. But I decide concerning the matter, as the messenger of Allah did. The daughter gets half, and the son's daughter gets a share, which complete thirds gets a sixth. And what remained to the full sister? Great Sahih. Narrated Jabir ibn Abdullah. We went out with the messenger of Allah and came to a woman of the Ansar in Al-Aswaf. The woman brought her 2 daughters and said, Messenger of Allah, Messenger of Allah, these are the daughters of Fara'id ibn Qais, who was killed as a martyr when he was with you at the battle of Uhud. Their paternal uncle has taken all their property and inheritance, and he has not left anything for them. What do you think, Messenger of Allah? They cannot be married unless they have some property. The Messenger of Allah said, Allah will decide regarding the matter. Then the verse of Surat An-Nisa was revealed. Allah thus directs you as regards your children's inheritance. Messenger of Allah said, Call to me the woman and her husband's brother. He then said to their paternal uncle, Give them 2/3 and their mother an 1/8, and what remains is yours. Abu Dawud said, the narrator Bisr made a mistake. They were the daughters of Sa'd bi al-Rabi, for Fara'id bi Qais was killed in the battle of Yamama. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. The wife of Sa'd bi al-Rabi said, Messenger of Allah, Sa'd died and left 2 daughters. He then narrated the rest of the tradition in a similar way. Abu Dawud said, This is the most correct tradition. Great Hassan. Narrated Al-Aswad bi Yazid. Mu'ad bi Jabal gave shares of inheritance to a sister and a daughter. He gave each of them half. He was at Yemen while the Prophet was alive. Great Sahih. Chapter 1075. Regarding the grandmother. Narrated Qabisa ibn Duwayb. A grandmother came to Abu Bakr asking him for her share of inheritance. He said, There is nothing prescribed for you in Allah's book, nor do I know anything for you in the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah. Go home till I question the people. He then questioned the people, and Al-Mughira ibn Shuba said, I had been present with the Messenger of Allah when he gave grandmother a 1/6. Abu Bakr said, Is there anyone with you? Muhammad ibn Maslama stood and said the same as Al-Mughira ibn Shuba had said. So Abu Bakr made it apply to her. Another grandmother came to Umar ibn al-Khattab asking him for her share of inheritance. He said, Nothing has been prescribed for you in Allah's book. The decision made before you was made for a grandmother other than you. I am not going to add in the shares of inheritance, but it is that 1/6. If there are 2 of you, it is shared between you. But whichever of you is the only one left, gets it all. Great Daif. Narrated Burayda. The Prophet appointed a 6th to a grandmother if no mother is left to inherit before her. Great Daif. Chapter 1076. What has been related about the grandfather's inheritance. Narrated Imran ibn Hussein. A man came to the Prophet and said, "My son has died. What do I receive from his estate?" He replied, "You receive a 6th. When he turned away, he called him and said, "You receive another 6th. When he turned away, he called him and said, "The other 6th is an allowance beyond what is due." Qatada said, "They, the companions, did not know the heirs with whom he was given a 6th. Qatada said, "The minimum share given to the grandfather was a 6th. Great Daif. Al-Hassan reported that Umar asked, Which of you knows what share the Messenger of Allah had given to the grandfather from the estate?" Makil ibn Yasar said, "The Messenger of Allah gave him a 6th. He asked, "Along with whom?" He replied, "I do not know." He said, "You do not know? What is the use then?" Great Sahih. Chapter 1077. Regarding the inheritance for Al-Asaba. Narrated Abdullah ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "Divide the property among those whose share have been prescribed in the Book of Allah, and what remains from the prescribed shares goes to the nearest male heirs." Great Sahih. Chapter 1078. Regarding the inheritance for those related due to the womb. Narrated Al-Miktam al-Kindi. The Prophet said, "If anyone leaves a deaf or a helpless family, I shall be responsible," and sometimes the narrator said, "Allah and his apostle will be responsible, but if anyone leaves property, it goes to his heirs. I am the heirs of him who has none, paying blood with for him and inheriting from him, and a maternal uncle is the heir of him who has none, paying blood with for him and inheriting from him." Great Hassan Sahih. Narrated Al-Miktam al-Kindi. The Prophet said, "I am nearer to every believer than himself, so if anyone leaves a deaf or a helpless family, I shall be responsible, but if anyone leaves property, it goes to his heirs. I am patron of him who has none, inheriting his property and freeing him from his liabilities. A maternal uncle is a patron of him who has none, inheriting his property and freeing him from his liabilities." Abu Dawud said, "Daya" means dependents or helpless family. Abu Dawud said, "This tradition has been transmitted by Al-Subaydi from Rashid B. Sad from Ibn Aid on the authority of Al-Miktam. It has also been transmitted by Muawiyah bin Salih from Rashid, who said, I heard al-Mikdam say, Great Hassan Sahih. Narrated al-Mikdam, I heard the Messenger of Allah say, I am the heirs of him who has none, freeing him from his liabilities and inheriting what he possesses. A maternal uncle is the heir of him who has none, freeing him from his liabilities and inheriting his property. Great Hassan Sahih. Narrated Aisha, Muminin, a client of the Prophet, died and left some property, but he left no child or relative. The Messenger of Allah said, Give what he has left to a man belonging to his village. Abu Dawud said, The tradition of Sufyan is more perfect. Musaddad said, Thereupon the Prophet said, Is there anyone belonging to his land? They replied, Yes. He said, Then give him what he has left. Great Sahih. Narrated Burayda ibn al-Hasib. A man came to the Messenger of Allah and said, I have property left by a man of Ast. I do not find any man of Ast to give it to him. He said, Go and look for a man of Ast for a year. He then came to him after 1 year and said, Messenger of Allah, I did not find any man of Ast to give it to him. He said, Look for a man of Kusa, whom you meet first, and give it to him. When he turned away, he said, Call the man to me. When he came to him, he said, Look for the leading man of Kusa and give it to him. Great Daif. Narrated Burayda ibn al-Hasib. A man of Kusa died and his estate was brought to the Prophet. He said, Look for his heir or some relative. But they found neither heir nor relative. The Messenger of Allah said, Give it to the leading man of Kusa. The narrator Yahya said, Sometimes I heard him al-Hussein ibn Aswad say in this tradition, Look for the greatest man of Kusa. Great Daif. Narrated Abdullah ibn Abbas. A man died leaving no heir, but a slave whom he had emancipated. The Messenger of Allah asked, Has he any heir? They replied, No, except a slave whom he had emancipated. The Messenger of Allah assigned his estate to him, the emancipated slave. Great Daif. Chapter 1079. Inheritance for the child in the case of Leon. Narrated Watila ibn al-Aska. The Prophet said, A woman gets inheritance from the free following. 1 she has set free, a foundling, and her child, about whom she has invoked a curse on herself if she was untrue in declaring he was not born out of wedlock. Great Daif. Narrated Makul. The Messenger of Allah assigned the estate of a child of a woman about whom she had invoked a curse to her mother and to her heirs after her. Great Sahih. Narrated Amr bin Shu'aib. on his father's authority, said that his grandfather reported from the Prophet something similar. Great Sahih. Chapter 1080. Can a Muslim inherit from a disbeliever? Narrated Usama b. Zayd. The Prophet as saying, a Muslim may not inherit from an infidel, nor an infidel from a Muslim. Great Sahih. Narrated Usama b. Zayd. I said, Messenger of Allah, where will you stay tomorrow? This happened during his Hajj. He replied, has Aqil left any house for us? He then said, we shall stay at the valley of Banu Kinara, where the Quraysh took an oath on unbelief. This refers to Al-Muhassab. The reason is that Banu Kinara made an alliance with the Quraysh against Banu Hashim, that they would have no marital connections with them, nor will have commercial transactions with them, not will give them any refuge. Al-Suri said, Kalf means valley. Great Sahih. Narrated Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Alas. The Prophet said, people of two different religions would not inherit from one another. Great Hassan Sahih. Narrated Mu'ad ibn Jabal. I heard the Messenger of Allah say, Islam increases and does not diminish. He therefore appointed a Muslim heir of a non-Muslim. Great Daif. Narrated Abu al-Aswad al-Dili. Mu'ad bought the property of a Jew whose heir was a Muslim. He then narrated from the Prophet to the same effect. Great Daif. Chapter 1081. Regarding one who accepts Islam before the distribution of the inheritance. Narrated Abdullah ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, an estate which was divided in pre-Islamic period may follow the division in force then. But any estate in Islamic times must follow the division laid down by Islam. Great Sahih. Chapter 1082. Regarding Al-Wala. Narrated Ibn Umar. Aisha, mother of believers Ra, intended to buy a slave girl to set her free. Her people said, we shall sell her to you on one condition, that we shall inherit from her. Aisha mentioned it to the Messenger of Allah. He said, that should not prevent you, for the right of inheritance belongs to the one who has set a person free. Great Sahih. Narrated Aisha, the Messenger of Allah as saying, the right of inheritance belongs only to the one who paid the price of the slave and patronized him by doing an act of gratitude. Great Sahih. Narrated Amr b. Suhaib. On his father's authority said that his grandfather reported Rabab ibn Hudhayfa married a woman, and 3 sons were born to him from her. Their mother then died. They inherited her houses and had the right of inheritance of her freed slaves. Amr ibn Alas was the Agnite of her sons. He sent them to Syria where they died. Ahmed ibn al-As then came. A freed slave of hers died and left some property. Her brothers disputed with him and brought the case to Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar reported the Messenger of Allah as saying, "Whatever property a son or a father receives as an heir will go to his agnates, whoever they may be." He then wrote a document for him, witnessed by Abdur Rahman ibn Auf, Zayd ibn Thabit, and one other person. When Abdul Malik became caliph, they presented the case to Hisham ibn Ismail or Ismail ibn Hisham. The narrator is doubtful. He sent them to Abd al-Malik, who said, "This is the decision which I have already seen." The narrator said, "So he, Abd al-Malik, made the decision on the basis of the document of Umar ibn al-Khattab, and that is still with us till this moment." Great Hassan. Chapter 1083. Regarding a man who accepts Islam at the hands of another. Narrated Tamim ad-Dari. Tamim asked Messenger of Allah, "What is the sunnah about a man who accepts Islam by advice and persuasion of a Muslim?" He replied, "He is the nearest to him in life and in death." Great Hassan Sahih. Chapter 1084. Regarding selling al-Wala. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Messenger of Allah forbade selling or giving away the right to inheritance by a manumitted slave. Great Sahih. Chapter 1085. Regarding a newborn who raises his voice and then dies. Narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "When an infant has raised its voice and then dies, it will be treated as an heir." Great Sahih. Chapter 1086. The abrogation of inheritance due to alliances by inheritance due to relations. Narrated Ibn Abbas. To those also to whom your right hand was pledged, give their due portion. A man made an agreement with another man in early days of Islam, and there was no relationship between the one of them inherited from the other. The following verse of Surat al-Anfal abrogated it. But kindred by blood have prior right against each other. Great Hassan Sahih. Ibn Abbas explained the following Quranic verse. To those also to whom your right hand was pledged, give your portion. When the emigrants came to Medina, they inherited from the helpers without any blood relationship with them for the brotherhood which the Messenger of Allah established between them when the following verse was revealed. To benefit everyone we have appointed shares, and heirs to property left by parent and relatives. It abrogated the verse, "To those also to whom your right hand was pledged, give their due portion." This alliance was made for help, well-wishing, and cooperation. Now a legacy can be made for him. The right to inheritance was abolished. Great Sahih. Narrated Dawud b al-Hussein. I used to learn the reading of the Quran from Sa'd, daughter of al-Rabi. She was an orphan. In the guardianship of Abu Bakr, I read the Quranic verse, "To those also to whom your right hand was pledged." She said, "Do not read the verse. Do not read the verse, to those also to whom your right hand was pledged." This was revealed about Abu Bakr and his son Abd al-Rahman when he refused to accept Islam. Abu Bakr took an oath that he would not give him a share from inheritance. When he embraced Islam, Allah Most High commanded His Prophet to give him the share. The narrator Abd al-Aziz added, "He did not accept Islam until he was urged on Islam by sword." Abu Dawud said, "He who narrated the word akadat means a pact, and he who narrated the word akadat means the party who made a pact. The correct is the tradition of Tala akadat." Great Daif. Narrated Ibn Abbas. Referring to the verse, "Those who believed and adopted exile as to those who believed but came not into exile." A Bedouin who did not migrate to Medina did not inherit from an emigrant, and an emigrant did not inherit from him. It was abrogated by the verse, "But kindred by blood have prior rights against each other." Great Hassan Sahih. Chapter 1087, regarding allegiances. Narrated Jubair b Mutim. The Messenger of Allah as saying, "There is no alliance in Islam, and Islam strengthened the alliance made during pre-Islamic days." Great Sahih. Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Messenger of Allah established an alliance of brotherhood between the immigrants and the helpers in our house. He was asked, "Did not the Messenger of Allah say, 'There is no alliance in Islam'?" He replied, "The Messenger of Allah established an alliance between the immigrants and the helpers in our house." This he said twice or thrice. Great Sahih. Great Sahih. Chapter 1088, regarding a woman inheriting from the blood money of her husband. Regarding a woman inheriting from the blood money of her husband. Narrated Umar ibn al-Khattab. Sa'id said, Umar ibn al-Khattab said, blood money is meant for the clan of the slain, and she will not inherit from the blood money of her husband. Ad-Dahak ibn Sufyan said, the Messenger of Allah wrote to me that I should give a share to the wife of Ashyam ad-Dubabi from the blood money of her husband. So Umar withdrew his opinion. Ahmad ibn Salih said, Abdul Razak transmitted this tradition to us from Mamar, from Asuri, on the authority of Sa'id. In this version he said, the Prophet made him governor over the Bedouins, great Sahih.